Okay, hi, this is Chris, the Natural Progressive, and I have a great privilege of having Kevin Hester on with me today. Kevin is a Kiwi born Irish anti imperialist environmentalist studying runaway, abrupt climate change and, and collapse. So, Kevin, you have some not great news, not great information to share, but everybody needs to hear what what you're talking about, what Guy's talking about, and many other, I mean, not many, but a few other scientists that are actually coming to the same conclusions, but I think a lot of them are being a little bit more careful. So here is, without further ado, Kevin Hester.
Hi, Chris. It's
Go
a
ahead, Kev.
pleasure to be on your show, even though all the news that we're going to be discussing is dire.
That's for sure. But I think it's important for people to know and not be surprised by it, and maybe have a little bit of a chance to prepare for it, make peace with it, and maybe in the meantime do what they can uh, to, I don't know, to say you're sorry to nature for everything that's happened, and try to help ease that. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
We're in the position of being Cassandra, where we're talking about the worst possible outcomes. And it's like someone standing up in the picture theater yelling out, fire, fire, fire. And then all the other patrons saying, oh, be quiet. We want to watch the movie. It's
Right.
so incredible that if you're being directly influenced by the sixth grade extinction and life is carrying on as normal or more or less as normal where you are, it's a very easy thing to ignore. But if you're in 50-degree temperatures in the Middle East and the air conditioning goes off, you can't ignore it.
Life is carrying
If
on
you're
as normal. Sorry, gotta go for a second. Yeah, you can't ignore it once it starts hitting you, and it really is starting to hit here, but it where people still have their comforts. They're not feeling it like some people in other countries that are feeling it right now, that don't have the air conditioning or the heat, or you know, things that battle against it. But certainly people are feeling it, don't you think? And what you're going to talk about is how each degree of change is going to affect us and what we're going to experience, correct?
Yes, those are some of the issues that I want to canvass, but there is so much to do and so much to say, it'll be hard to talk about it all. But some of the important things I'd like people to realize is that no one's telling the truth. None of the mainstream media, or the corporate media, we should call them, are telling the truth about how much warming we've already had. They keep moving the baseline for when they say how much warming there's been since industrial civilization. But if you don't go all the way back to 1700, when Thomas Savery had a coal-powered water pump that was being used in coal mines to extract water, he had that patented just in the beginning of the 1700s. So we should be measuring all of the warming from that point. If you go to the Arctic News blog, Sam Karana's Arctic News blog, he's got a post there about how we are 1.73 above baseline if you go back to 1750. So, that just goes to show we're already past the guardrails that the IPCC are trying to sell us as still being achievable when we've gone past them already. And
Mm,
anyone paying attention, see we're in dangerous, abrupt climate change now, not in the future.
right. And can I just say one thing before we get too deep? I just want to say that I want to hold questions so I can fully engage with you and pay attention to you till the last 20 minutes, and I was planning on about an hour. So if we could hold off on questions till about quarter two or so, on the hour. If is that okay with you? Or wait,
Absolutely. Yep,
12:40.
you run it out.
Actually, that'd be a quarter after, I think. But yeah, it's so much easier to pay attention to you and not have to look at the comments. I love looking at the comments and I want to pay attention to them, but you're the guest, and I think I deserve you deserve my full attention while you're on, and then we'll address the questions. So
Cool, fire away.
awesome, awesome. So explain to me. You posted an article, and I put that in the show notes um, on Facebook that you wanted to discuss, and it was so close to showtime I didn't write it down. But what was that you were going to talk about?
Okay, 5 days ago, Sam Karana from the Arctic News blog posted an article, and the title of the article is "A Rise of 18 Degrees C, or 32.4 degrees Fahrenheit, by 2026."
Wow.
Now, I completely and utterly struggle to get my head around that, even though I've been a full-time climate or abrupt climate change researcher now for 8 years. But what Sam goes into is the multiplicative effects of tipping points, and the four prominent ones that Sam's discussing in this blog post is the loss of Arctic sea ice's ability to act as a buffer to absorb incoming ocean heat. 2, the loss of Arctic sea ice's ability to reflect sunlight back into space, which is the albedo effect. 3, destabilization of sediments at the seafloor in the Arctic Ocean. And 4, permafrost melt. Now, what Sam's done, and I'll put this post in the comment section so that people can see it, is that what Sam's done is added up the multiplicative effects of all these tipping points. And that's what no one's doing. Everyone is still functioning on linear climate change, but we're in the non-linear stage of the unraveling of the biosphere. So things are going to unravel very, very quickly. Michael E. Mann and colleagues came up with a theory called the euphemistically referred to as the hockey stick theory many years ago. And what that showed is the non-linear ramping up of warming as a result of crossing tipping points. But now that we have crossed them, Michael Mann now refuses to even accept his own previous research. And
Yeah,
that
I've
goes
seen
to show,
that.
yeah, that goes to show how incredibly compromised scientists are, who are relying on models and relying on the finance for those models and relying on getting research grants from their organizations. Anyone who talks like Guy McPherson or myself or Sam Karana are never going to get any kind of research grant to further or to develop our perspective. So, of course, the dominant culture doesn't want anyone thinking about a 18 degrees C temperature rise by 2026, because that's not how you keep on the dominant culture going. That's not how you keep people going to work and buying on credit and living the modern lifestyle, which is the same lifestyle that's brought us to the edge of extinction.
Yeah, consumerism for sure, and they keep driving that and population growth of cities. They brag about their population while I'm screaming, no, we don't want any more. We're and okay, I got hell after talking to Guy McPherson on the population issue because I am a mother of three. And I just have to say that a lot of that had to do with women not having options. I was denied a tubal ligation at age 22. So that's why I have three kids. Birth control didn't work. It's much better now, but back then it didn't work very well. So I'm sorry, I do have a right to talk about population control, especially unintended pregnancies, which would have accounted for 50%, approximately, maybe a little less than 50%. But if you just were able to diminish those, our population, could decrease, and there would be more resources left for the people there. But that's nearly not enough to get at a sustainable level. And what do you have to say about that? Sorry.
In 19, when I was 8 years old, Professor Paul Ehrlich wrote a book called The Population Bomb. And he was able to extrapolate the data that long ago, 50 years ago, and he could see that population overshoot was going to have extraordinarily detrimental effects on the natural resources and the natural environment. I'm going to be interviewing Paul. Myself and Guy McPherson will be interviewing Paul Ehrlich in next Tuesday's episode of
Nice.
Nature Backs Last on the Progressive Radio Network. we will be going over the issues that he brought up 50 years ago, and also we'll be going through where that's taken us to now.
That's great. That's super great. Um, you and Guy have been doing really, really great work. I really feel bad that I didn't know who you were when you were on my chat with Guy McPherson, but I have a thing where I'm focused more on the issue, the names, and his name was up there first, so that's the one I remembered and hunted down. But it's really great that you're willing to talk about it. I know it's not fun just seeing some of the comments I got. Not the first 2 days. The first 2 days, the comments were great, and then after that, uh, they rip you for talking about things like this. There's some people that are downright mean and nasty and threatening. It's like, wow. Not that it's going to stop me because I'm too damn stubborn, but um, how has that affected you and what you do? I mean, obviously, you're
Well,
still talking about it.
Well, it's a stress response from a lot of those people. I don't have children, so I can't comprehend what it's like for a parent to hear me talking about all complex life on the planet falling over in the coming years. You know, not in decades or in centuries, but in coming years. I can understand why people get angry with us, but this is the nature of being Cassandra. No one wants to hear what we're saying. In the old days, when anyone went to the emperor with bad news about how the empire was falling over on the periphery, the normal procedure was to shoot the messenger. And that's what Guy and I get. But you know what, the amount of shooting at me that I get, which is horrible, you know, people hate on me, and which I find quite extraordinary. I've got nothing to gain from talking about this. I don't put my head up over the parapet to be shot at for no reason. But at the end of the day, Guy was the first person on the planet to work out that the trajectory we were on was taking us to extinction and was going to take down most, if not all, the biosphere with it. And he put his head up over the parapet, and he has copped nothing but abuse ever since. And it's extraordinary that we're the messengers and we're getting shot. And whilst people are concentrating on being angry and bitter towards us, the climate is spiraling further and further into disarray and to collapse, and nothing is being done about it. It's really
Exactly.
quite extraordinary.
It is absolutely extraordinary. And when someone actually, instead of insulting you, brings up an argument, say in the comments after one of these discussions, it is almost always something like carbon is good. Why carbon is what plants breathe. Why is that bad? And I just like to say, okay, if all we had on Earth to breathe was oxygen, oxygen is good for us, but we would have no plant life. So I mean, we depend on each other. We need both carbon and oxygen, but the levels are far exceeding in the carbon. Correct? You probably know a lot more about this than I do.
I have more trouble with abrupt climate change deniers than I have with people who deny climate change at all. If people are so stupid that they can't understand that the burning of carbon is warming up the atmosphere and changing the evolutionary process on the planet, then I can't even be bothered debating with them. But what really pisses me off is people who know about climate change, but they can't get their head around exponential nonlinear climate change. That takes me back to a wonderful presentation by Albert Bartlett on YouTube about the exponential function. And the great takeout remark from that presentation is, quote, one of the greatest shortcomings of the human race is our inability to understand the exponential function. I highly recommend people go and have a look at those presentations from Al Bartlett.
Yeah, good suggestion. So, I mean, I can't understand how people can look around at what's going on, look at uh, the the statistics, like 150 to 250 species go extinct every day in 24 hours, and seeing what's happening with the coral reefs, seeing what's happening in Australia and the hundreds of thousands of cows that died in a catastrophic flood. and the bats that are dying. I mean, the sea life that is just non-existent in certain areas, and the whales washing up on shore. And that's one thing I wanted to ask you about was you're in New Zealand, and haven't they recently had a tremendous number of whales washing up on shore? Just
Ye- Yes, there's always been strandings of cetaceans on sand dunes or on beaches. That's always happened. But like the climate crisis, that has become exponential. That is happening more and more often, more and more frequently, which is extraordinary because there's less and less cetaceans in the water. So if you go and have a look, do a quick search of Daja Mail, who's the staff reporter at truthout.org, and Dara's written a couple of different articles about the amount of electronic noise from exploration for fossil fuels and also from the military vessels that are in the water. And there's so much electronic noise. This is affecting the sonar ability of the cetaceans like orca, whales, and dolphins. I think it's a very significant factor. I used to be an ocean sailor. On my last offshore cruising yacht, I had the traditional depth sounder, which could, look down to thousands of meters. And I also had a forward-looking probe, which was like it sent out a signal forward of the boat, and it was wonderful. It gave you a map of what the structure in front of you was, and it was great for navigating your way through reefs or through coral bombies. But that is all noise that we're injecting down into the water. When they do exploration for deep sea drilling, they fire off these sonic booms, which are the same as cannons being fired underwater. So this is deafening, blinding, and distorting the sonar abilities of these animals. So we're making their habitat uninhabitable. It's an extraordinary dichotomy that's unfolding. And the
yeah,
thing that really pisses me off about it is that we know it. We know these things are all happening, and we carry on. Business
yeah,
as usual.
yeah. That devastates me, and I just don't know how to react and respond, other than doing what I'm doing now, which is trying to get information out there. And I started by seeing the own destruction in my state and surrounding states where I travel for work. But oh my gosh, the sonar is what they do. You think that the Fukushima radiation has anything to do with it as well?
I'm 100% certain that Fukushima Daiichi is having a negative effect on the area directly around Honshu in Japan, where it's leaking from, and in the northern hemisphere, and of course not only in the water but the atmosphere. TEPCO say that they are losing 300 gallons or 300 tons of radioactive water into the Pacific every day for the last 8 years now. But no one talks about the fact that there are 3 coriums that are now exposed to the atmosphere. So there's a lot of atmospheric radiation going up. And of course, if it rains through that radiation, that gets washed back down onto the land, back down into the oceans. Fukushima Daiichi is and was going to be an extraordinarily major influence on the evolution of all species on the planet going forward. But my contention, and that of Guy and Sam Karana and many others, is that runaway abrupt climate change is going to interrupt that by putting the 6th grade extinction on steroids and taking out us and most, if not all, complex life in the coming years or maybe decades. So the thing that I worried about so much all my life as an anti-nuclear activist is going to be terminated by the fact that habitat on this planet is going away. It's such an extraordinary dichotomy. I totally get that people can't wrap their heads around it. I
I'm
just wish
having a hard time with that.
it
Yeah,
was
I
me when I.
mean, I at least thought it would take a lot longer than it's taking, and I'm seeing things happen right before my eyes, and I didn't expect it to come that fast, even though I was aware from childhood that this could become a problem, and I was worried about it. But I pulled a quote from one of your videos, and I think it's really relevant to what we're talking about now, and I jotted it down because it makes so much sense. You asked the question, how can you see all the species going extinct and not see that our name is on the list? And that's just so true. I mean, how can you not see that?
If you look at previous extinction events on the planet, the large mammals and vertebrates were the first to fall over. The less complex your biology, the more adaptive and able to handle a lot of these changes. So the big apex predators and the vertebrates were first to go last time, and they will this time. We need habitat. We need a whole lot of things to stay alive. We need air. There's been articles published in the last few days about the oxygen losing the ocean losing its oxygen. The vast majority of our oxygen comes out of the oceans, and they are dying. That we're heading towards Canfield oceans, where hydrogen sulfide will be pouring out of the oceans instead of oxygen, which is a pretty amazing concept for me, because as I sit here doing this interview, I'm 100 meters away from the Pacific Ocean and the Hauraki Gulf of New Zealand. This week alone, on Friday, I saw orca as I took a ferry into town, and the day before, I saw a pod of dolphin go past my living room window as I was sitting here. And it's hard to believe when you see that all of this could fall over so quickly. But that's the same with every other civilization. There was only a few people who were able to see that the civilization was in overreach. And most people carried on like normal until the water stopped coming out of the well or out of the aqueduct, and there was no food in the city. That's where
Yeah,
we're heading, and we're heading there really soon.
that makes sense. Another quote of yours. Sorry, I just pulled quotes, just because what you see is so just amazing, and well, not necessarily that it's a happy amazing. It's just it just hits home to me, in the way I feel, and what you just said totally, um, goes along with what you just said just now. So species lost are the canaries in a coal mine. The oceans are dying. I mean, that's, oh my gosh, what you kind of were talking about. But the oceans are dying, and it's just one little species at a time. They may be thriving in one area or another area, but that's only temporary because there was another, um, extinction of something else that affected it, that allowed one species to thrive for a short period of time. But the co-extinction paper, that Guy talks about, and I've looked up and looked at myself, and I've talked about it in on my various interviews. But it's amazing, you know. It does a great. We are just. I mean, those are just the canaries in the coal mine, the small species that are being lost right now.
I referred to it recently as us playing Extinction Jenga, where the Jenga pile of all the species, and we're on the top, which means we have the furthest to fall. And each day, the official figures are 150 to 200 species go extinct every day. But considering we've only identified something like 18% of all species on the planet, it's hard to believe. It's hard for me to believe that it's only 200. I would expect it to be a lot more. And one of the things that you don't know with such a complex biosphere is that there could be keystone species that exist that we don't even know of,
Oh
and we're
yeah, and
just chipping away at them.
they're saying they're finding new species as they're going extinct. Like there was an article about that. Like, yeah, we're finding these brand new species, but yeah, they're gonna be gone. It's just as they identify them. I mean, they're just barely identifying new ones, and they're gone. That is insane to me. And then 60% of the animal populations have been lost since 1970. Uh, and of course, we filled up that space and destroyed and polluted and damaged it on top of the water pollution. I There's no way you can sustain this, and I've tried to figure out any which way that we could possibly work it out to where we could save the planet. And there isn't a solution that I can see logically working.
Well, especially not within the dominant paradigm of capitalism, which is based on infinite growth on a finite planet. You know, a child of 10, when once explained to them the concept of infinite growth on a when you have a finite resource, will be able to tell you that at some stage in the future that will crash and burn. We're in the crashing and burn stage, and people can't wrap their head around the fact that it's happening on our watch. It's
I begged my
and the
family
whole
not to have kids, nieces and nephews, but you can't convince them. They think life is going to go on just as it is, that they'll always have food in the grocery store, water out of the tap, and a job, and it's just not going to. This is not going to continue. I don't know how long it's going to take, but it's not going to continue.
Well, I think that's something that I would like to talk about, because when we talk about how fast, with quoting Sam Karana's work, how that we could have that temperature rise in by 2026. What people, I think, need to think about is that we're only one big ecological catastrophe away from industrial civilization collapsing, because the whole paradigm of industrial civilization is based on credit and bank bonds and government bonds that are 10 and 30 and 50 years. When people realize that we don't have 10, 30 or 50 years, the economic system will fall over. When the economic system falls over, all the particulates, the pollution, or the aerosol masking effect falls out of the sky, and we get another immediate spike of as much as maybe 1.5 degrees. That could happen. That could happen in 6 weeks. We could have a doubling of all anthropogenic warming in 6 weeks when industrial civilization falls over.
Right, and then there's the other thing about, with all the extreme weather events, the power grid going out because it can't handle it, because there's increasing needs on power, just with the population growth alone. And then on top of that, you have the extreme temperatures that put another pressure on that power grid. Once that power grid goes out, then it's not keeping the nuclear power plants open, and then there's meltdowns. I mean, how many ways are there that we could be screwed? Just
Oh, it's the perfect storm where in every single direction you look, the consequences of our crack-like addiction to carbon show that there is a multitude of reasons why this set of living arrangements and complex life is coming to an end. When you stop maintaining those nuclear plants, each one of them has 3 spent fuel pools, which have huge quantities, hundreds, sometimes thousands of tons of highly radioactive spent fuel rods in them. Once you stop cooling them, the zirconium tubes that the uranium pellets are stored in will overheat. The criticality will build up in the pools. The zirconium will get hot, and then it will catch on fire. All alloys, if you heat them up high enough, catch on fire, and that will aerosol those uranium fuel pellets into the atmosphere. There will be fires burning at those nuclear plants, the like of which this planet has never, ever seen before. It's one of the great atrocities of the 6th great extinction, is that we've introduced ionizing radiation and nuclear elements into the atmosphere and into the biosphere that had never existed on this planet before. So that's going to influence whatever next iteration takes place on the planet when the planet stabilizes, if indeed it ever does. Whatever's left behind, it will all be scarred with the legacy of the nuclear age. So I don't know. I don't know if there's any other life forms out in the universe. I'm sure there probably is somewhere. But if someone bumps into this planet in the future, even though all the tangible physical aspects of industrial civilization will have mostly disappeared, the main footprint that we will have left behind will be anthropogenic ionizing radiation.
incredible. That's just incredible. And on top of that, if that wasn't even an issue, say take that out of the picture, um, the extreme changes in the weather, and where the weather or the climate is changing and becoming more drastic in the difference, like the colds, the difference between the low and the highs and all that, and how quickly they change. There's going to be an issue growing food, and there already is. So that could be devastating, especially with more population, and that's why population plays a big role. I mean, the more people you have on the planet, the quicker this is going to happen. We're going to run out of food. We're going to run out of clean water. Uh, I mean, I just there's so many different ways. It's just I don't see how people can understand. I keep saying that, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around how people can't believe that this is an issue. But what do you think of supply, and how quickly do you think that the changing weather patterns are really going to affect that for Americans or for Europeans, the wealthier countries?
The two things that are bearing down on us at the moment, which I find are probably the most influential, is that in September we're going to have an.
It's all right.
Sorry, I just had a truckload of people turn up.
I've
Bye
had that
bye.
happen. Or just a really loud husband. Yeah, I've had that. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. We'll go back to what I was talking about. Is the two big things that I see bearing down on us at the moment is that in September this year we'll go through the time where we'll see the lowest Arctic sea ice level, and we could have a blue water event or an Arctic ice-free event this year, and that's what Sam is talking about in the blog post that we referred to earlier about the loss of albedo and how much of a temperature spike we'll see from that. So that's one thing bearing down on us this year. And the second one is that very soon we're going to have an El Nino event where the Pacific Ocean waters are going to warm up, and that will create more and more destabilized weather and superstorms. Those things are both in the cusp in the coming months. So I firmly believe that industrial civilization could get rolled over by any one of these things in this year or the coming year. I think that we're on such incredible borrowed time that people are completely underestimating the rapidity that all this could unfold in.
Yeah, no kidding. And another comment I get a lot from the deniers is alarmists have been saying this for years and years and years. And my response to that would be, yes, they have, and we never listened. And that's why we're in the predicament we are now. What do you say to those people who just say, yeah, alarmists have been spouting that for years and it hasn't happened yet?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. To be the person standing on the street corner with the image board saying the world's coming to an end is because of the wolf in the past and people making predictions that didn't come true in the past. That doesn't mean that people making those predictions now aren't going to come true. And what I'd like to reiterate is that my position is based on science. It's not based on belief. It's based on uncompromised, uninfluenced assessment of the situation. Years and years ago, everyone used to talk, NGOs used to talk about the danger of crossing tipping points. Now that we've crossed those tipping points, no one wants to talk about them. So, there's an incredible level of cognitive dissonance that's going on. And I think also deliberate lying. I've got a blog post on my website, kevinhester.live, about the liar Michael Mann. Michael Mann is the corporate media's go-to guy on climate change. And he recently said in an interview with Salon that if we introduce, in the coming decade, introduce the carbon tax, we can keep warming to below 1.5 C. Well, I don't believe that there's a scientist on the planet that would believe what he said. And I can't conceive of him believing it. So it can only be a blatant lie. We're
Yeah,
already past 1.5 C if you go back to the 1700 baseline.
right. And I think a big detriment to what the message you and Guy and a few others are trying to get across of how urgent it is. I think a lot of people have been desensitized, or um, the boy who called wolf syndrome, where all the religions were saying it was the end of the world, or there was Y2K, where now people just don't even buy into end of the world prophecies or anything like that, and that's a real tragedy that those kind of, I mean, Y2K, I really doubt it would have been the end of the earth or anything, but it was pretty scary at the time. But the the religious biblical prophecies saying that the world was going to end, or the 2012 one with the Mayans, the Mayan calendar ended in 2012, whatever. I think those have been kind of false alarms that make people not believe what we're talking about now.
The distinction I would make about those three different scenarios is the religious one. Well, that's purely mumbo jumbo, where people believe
Obviously.
that there's some big white guy on a surfboard flying, surfing around in the sky, who's omnipresent and can stand by and watch us wiping out 200 species every day and doesn't mind and doesn't have any worry about it. I find that completely outrageous. With the Y2K thing, that goes back to capitalism. That was this extraordinary opportunity for people to milk the system financially and make a whole lot of money out of it. The difference between our positions with the small number of us like Sam Carana, Guy McPherson, Malcolm Light, who are talking about the multiplicative effects of crossing tipping points. The commonality with us is that none of us are getting paid. None of us have anything to gain from sticking our head up over this parapet and saying these things, except for the fact that I believe that the youth of today deserve the truth. They deserve to know that the time that has been left for them is very, very short, and that they need to prioritize what they're going to do. I personally think the entire correct school curriculum should be thrown out, and it should be reoriented to adaptation and to developing practical skills that these kids are going to need when the internet goes down. Of course, to do that, you'd have to accept that there was a clear and present danger, and capitalism's not going to do it. It's as simple as that. I see great things being done with the Extinction Rebellion movement, but they're lobbying capitalism. Excuse me, capitalism doesn't give a fuck about your children. It
No,
doesn't give a fuck about 200 people going, the 200 species going extinct every day. All it's interested in is short-term gain. So I see that the whole Extinction Rebellion movement, I believe, has already gone down a cul-de-sac. And what that's going to do is it's going to dissipate people's anger and energy in the wrong direction. Lobbying the governments and lobbying the corporations. I've been doing it for 4 decades. And where has it got us? It's got us almost nowhere. And at this really incredible late juncture, I don't think it's what people should be doing. I think they should be going down the road of what Jim Bendell in his formative paper that was released recently called Deep Adaptation. And it's talking about adapting to a post-industrial civilization. I think habitat will fall over within months or years of industrial civilization falling over. But if you've got some practical skills, you can have a few good days or a few good weeks or a few good months. But, sending young kids off to school to study IT or accounting or law is just an incineration of their last days. It's shameful and irresponsible.
that is an incredible point, and I really appreciate what you said about Y2K and how corporations seen that as an opportunity. And I think corporations are also going to see the this predicament as an opportunity, and I think it's going to be attached to things like the Green New Deal, where they will try to capitalize off of it, try to make false claims about the environment. Oh, you all you need to do is buy an electric car and get rid of all the other. And I've heard them actually say they want to get rid of all gas engines, all combustion engines, and replace those all with electric. Well, how much energy is it going to take to build all those new cars, and how much to melt down all those old cars? And no one is even considering that. This is a drive for capitalism is what that is. It has nothing to do with saving the environment. I, so they're going to
That's where
capitalize
the
off of it with things like that.
that's where the alternative energy movement is so disingenuous and deceitful. Where the problem that we have is that industrial civilization is unsustainable. And then you get the big green movements and the big green NGOs and political parties coming out and saying, oh, go to renewables, go electric. That is just another department of capitalism. The same ideology that's grinding the living planet into dust. And it's just a diversion, a smoke screen at the edge of extinction. Don't fall for it, people. Don't fall for it.
Exactly. Okay, so I think we need to open it up for questions now. We have 34 people here with us, so that's pretty nice. And then how much it spreads after the fact, and we're probably being multicast on Facebook as well, so that's always nice. It's good to get the word out there. All right, guys, time for questions. Lizard people, what? Okay, I think there's a smart aleck in the audience. Any questions? Osama, have you seen any questions? Or
Yep, you go ahead.
okay, well, I'll ask another one if they're not ready. I have a whole bunch of them written down. That's just what I do. Okay, all right. This is a real cerebral question for you, and probably I don't know how you'll feel about it because it kind of borders on not physical realm. So this is a question I ask myself. So you're probably think I'm crazy, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it anyway. Is the end of humanity the end of consciousness? Human conscious, animal consciousness. I just putting that out there. I'm just wondering, as you're trying to reconcile things, do you think it's the end of consciousness altogether?
I don't dwell on anything like that. I live in the real world. I live in the paradigm that I can see before me. I don't think about what happens after you die. It's just too esoteric, and it's just not me. I'm making the most of the wonderful place that I have to live, and the incredibly fortuitous life I have being born in New Zealand. And I don't dwell in any way, shape, or form on what happens after we die.
Okay, I just thought I'd throw that out there. I mean, I have some reason to believe that there's something outside of our body. I don't think it's a god or anything. Just some kind of connection you have with other species, other beings. But that's a topic for another day. I'll leave that one alone. Um, Chris Foster says if we want to have any chance of doing anything positive about this, then the first thing we ought to do is ditch the idea of money. And I kind of agree with that. And I would be so happy if we went back into living in our own localities with you know walking or riding horses for transportation. Of course, I'm a horse person, so um, and growing your own food and not traveling 50, 100 miles back and forth to work every day. Things like that, I think would maybe help a little. I don't know. I don't know if I don't think it will save us at all. I'm just hoping it will slow things down. But that's not going to happen. No one's going to change their life like
The
that.
late,
So,
the late great Michael C. Rupert used to say, "quote until you change the way money works, you change nothing." And in that
mhm.
one quote, it nails that whole situation exactly. From the moment civilization was formed, civilization was able to control the food supply. The minute the food supply was controlled, it was monetized. All of those things are integral steps on the road to extinction. They guaranteed the fact that nothing tangible was done about bringing about real change, because the whole system, control money, um, getting most of that money into the hands of the smallest number. No, there's no
Okay.
way out of this monkey trap, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's sad. So, do you think the economy or the climate will take us out first?
I think the climate will take out the economy, and then the minute the economy falls over, we get the loss of the aerosol masking effect, and we get a massive spike in temperature. Excuse me. At the same time, we get all those nuclear power station meltdowns and fires. Chaos will just break out, and it'll break out really, really quickly. That's the big takeout from this message, is that this thing could unravel in a mere few weeks. That's how tenuous our hold on civilization is now.
Yeah, that's scary. So Jay Thadcast asked, do me and you believe that we will actually see the worst of climate change? You go first.
Can you ask the question again? Sorry, it faded
Sure.
out at the end.
Do you believe that we will actually see the worst of climate change? I'm guessing, like, us personally and, people
Oh yeah.
right now.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think that anyone born after 1950 will die of old age. I think that very, very few people from now on will die of old age. Oh, this is one of the ways that the dominant culture and the corporate media are now portraying the disaster, where they keep repeating the 2100 meme, and there's going to be this much sea level rise by 2100. 2100 is a human construct, and if there is no 2100. I honestly believe that this whole system will be over in a few years' time. The
Yeah.
question is, everyone watching this now will be watching the end of the movie, and it's going to be ugly.
And okay, so my answer is I agree 100%. I'm already seeing it start, so I have no problem believing that I will see the worst of it. So there's your answer. Okay, another question. Osama, the natural progressive, for Kevin, as a sailor and environmental observer, can you give us some contrast of what the life in the sea is like now as compared with 30 years ago? Thanks, Osama.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. That's a good question, because it was an epiphany in I was an ocean sailor, blue water sailor, for a quarter of a century. And when I first started sailing in the open water, one of the things that I saw heading up, I live in the South Pacific, and I did a lot of deliveries up to the Central Pacific. And what I used to see a lot was flying fish and albatross. And I watched both of those two species numbers plummet, and to the point where I did two ocean passages where I didn't see any flying fish, and that really hit home to me. And I came home and I thought, I've got to find out what's happening. And at the time, I just put it down to overfishing, and that the fact that industrial fishing has vacuumed the oceans and left them bereft of ocean life. So obviously, species like flying fish would have been really impacted. But it was only then, when I started doing that study, that I realized that the effect that climate change and ocean acidification were having on the oceans. So yeah, and just in that quarter of a century, I saw mammoth changes taking place on the open water. That brought
Wow.
me to where I am now. I started studying. I went down the rabbit hole, and found out about abrupt climate change leading to near-term human extinction. I heard about Guy McPherson's work. For the first 2 years I knew about Guy, I spent the whole time trying to prove him wrong. And I was angry and bitter towards him, like most people are. And then the more I looked, the more I saw that, yeah, okay, Guy's just been the first person on the planet to understand the severity of the crisis. So now Guy and I are best friends. He stays at my house when he's in New Zealand. We have a wonderful relationship, even though I was a Guy hater like most people at one stage.
I don't think I've ever
Take
been a
that,
guy hater. I don't
yeah,
know.
take that advice,
Skeptic.
people. Let the Guy hating go, and give the man the credit he deserves.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Let's see. Do you see a blue ocean this summer? That's from Rob Cometti.
I think that there is a strong possibility that we could have a blue ocean event in the Arctic. No doubt about that. But I also think that people should be not too engrossed about the technicality of a blue ocean event, because a blue ocean event is effectively less than 1 million square miles of ice, sea ice in the Arctic. But that's a line that's been drawn in the sand by sapiens again. And it could be that we get the massive methane discharge that Natalia Shakova and Igor Semiletov have hypothesized. We could get that at any moment. They said that, I think, in one of Guy's interviews, he quoted at 2008 was the first time it was declared that we could have that 50 gigaton methane event at any time. So we are way down the line of being in the territory where it could that discharge could happen while we're having this interview. So don't get too down in the danger is already happening now. The fire's been lit.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different ways. It's almost, I mean, things that can happen, and we don't even know what we don't know yet. So, I'm trying to think if this is the comment. This is a comment. George Carlin said, "We gave up the game when we let the high priests and the traitors have control." Great comment. That was Pat, the Batman fan. Human. Oh, by the way, sorry, quick note. Human, I'm sorry, I made you moderator without telling you. I just know you do a good job, so that's what I did. So, sorry. Tell me if you want me to remove you, but thank you, Human. The environment killed many from the chemicals in the air, water, and food. Wait, I don't know if that's a question. The environment killed many. Okay. I was trying to phrase it as a question, but I guess that's a statement. The environment killed many from the chemicals in the air, water, and food, which is true. Osama, anarcha, anarcha, anarchism is not a romantic fable, but the hard-headed realization based on 5,000 years of experience. I guess they're having another conversation. Okay,
We
I'll
were
finish
all
first.
anarchists until civilization.
Yeah, that's
People
true.
lived in yeah. That's what the village environment was. And what it was they had rules but no rulers. That's the thing that I like most about anarchy. I would call myself respect. And I like the fact that it's but not having rulers.
Yeah, we don't need rulers. There's other ways to deal with things without having imperialism, which I know you're against, and I'm just against anyone who thinks they're superior to everybody else and then takes advantage of everyone because of it. So, and that's exactly what's happened over the years. So, um, Osama had more to say on that. That that we cannot entrust the management of our lives to kings, priests, politicians, generals, and county commissioners. I guess that's a quote from Edward Abbey. Going South says hi. Hey, Going South. Um, everyone says hi to Going South. Okay. Jaw Universe says, should dismantling nuclear power plants be the main aim to leave something behind?
Yeah, if there was anything that we could do in these late stages, I would love to see us decommissioning nuclear plants. But, people like James Lovelock and Dr. James E. Hansen, they are advocates for nuclear energy. At this really late, dangerous stage of abrupt climate change, they are advocating for more nuclear energy. One of the biggest problems with a nuclear power station is keeping it cool. How are you going to keep it cool when you have runaway warming? And
They're just not
it's just like the around alternative energy. It's all about keeping this set of living arrangements going.
right, exactly. Sandy, Environmental Coffee House. Sandy says hi, Kevin. You have so many bands on here. Okay. Um, we're going to be doing a show together,
And
by
now
the
that
way.
the subject of environment, now that the subject of environmental coffee houses come up, I suggest people follow that website and the Facebook page, Environmental Coffee House, and that they have a great Facebook group as well. There's a lot of good work done there by good people. Sandy's a wonderful woman.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to be in that group. I'm raising my hand. I'll be there. Okay. Jan, oh wait, I already asked that one, Osama. Thank you for repeating them though, in case I miss them. Um, yes, Sandy, you are late. Um, let's see. Aren't we all a little late? Pat the Batman fan says that's true. Everybody's a little late on fixing this problem. That's why we can't fix it. So let's see.
Guy Guy McPherson wrote a really good article on his website in the last couple of days. The article is called "Living with Urgency on a Dying Planet," and one of the things that Guy goes into is how many warnings we've had and for how long. George
Right,
Perkins Marsh in 1847 predicted that the burning of fossil fuels would change the atmosphere in a detrimental way. It's not as if we weren't warned. It's just that capitalism had no intention of changing.
right. And they still don't. They won't. I don't care how bad it gets. They'll try to profit off of our last breath. And that's the way I feel about capitalism. So it's frustrating, especially when you have to rely on it to survive and feed your horses. But, I have to rely on it to feed my horses. Not everyone does that, but I do. And my horses are old and
My dad,
they need care. So
my dad was a socialist trade unionist. And when I was a kid, I remember him in an offhand remark saying one time, "Son, if we don't overthrow capitalism, it will make the planet uninhabitable." And that was just a casual remark that is probably 40 or 45 years old. So, there
that
was
is
plenty
super
of
wise.
people who could see the writing on the wall.
Right. Gosh, you're cut out. So I didn't know if you were done or if you just cut out for a second. Um,
No, I'm
do you, sorry, you're done? Okay. Do you think end
carry on.
of
Yeah.
life options will be provided later? Or I don't know. Have you considered that? Like if something gets really bad, like, okay, I don't want to suffer. So what do I do? I have more questions, but go ahead.
Well, I don't think that the dominant culture will allow that, although there are a few places there you can. In some parts of Australia, you can. In Switzerland, they have clinics where you can go to terminate your life. And if you have the right kind of doctor's advice and they say that, yeah, you have no quality of life, you can do it already in Switzerland. But the
Mhm.
dominant culture is not going to go along with that because it accepts that, that accepts that the biosphere is in terminal decline and that people have a right to make those decisions. It's an interesting subject for me because many years ago, I lost a sister-in-law to motor neuron disease, and she choked to death in front of the family with no intervention. And I wasn't there. I was overseas when it happened, but it was a very traumatic experience for my family. And my mother called a family meeting when I got back to New Zealand to talk about it. And she said, "We'll never let that happen again in our family. We will intervene." So I've had that when Ma was dying of bowel cancer and I hospiced her, I had it hanging like Damocles sword over my head that I might have to intervene and overdose my mother if the pain level was so bad that she couldn't, she wanted out. And I think that's an option that everybody should be entitled to take when they decide that is the right time. We need to support each other. We need to make sure that people aren't doing it for the wrong reasons. But I think that everyone has got a right to determine when they leave the planet, and
And
especially
how
if there's no quality of life and how.
exactly, and how, and that's what I struggle with personally with my animals. With the horses, once I can't provide them food or water, what's the humane thing to do? I couldn't let them go without water and not without food. And that's I honestly, between that and my kids, that's the hardest thing to deal with this whole thing. That's I just don't know how I'm going to handle that at that time. But I've time to try and work it out, I guess. But that almost makes me cry thinking about that. So good question, but hard questions. And we have to work through it. It's therapy. If you don't work through it, you're I don't know. You'll just go nuts.
Well,
Let's
it's
yeah.
quite extraordinary how we keep people alive when their entire quality of life has been lost. There are large numbers of people in a vegetative state in hospitals around the world that are being kept alive when their brain function is gone. If that was an animal, you could be charged with animal abuse. It's extraordinary the disconnect between what we believe is acceptable for animals and what we believe is acceptable for humans. You know, the vast majority of birds on this planet now are in captivity. They're in jail. There are more birds in jail than there are in the natural world.
Yeah, I'm noticing a huge decrease in birds in my travels. Like, I go and I'd park and there's all these trees, and generally there'd be at least 3 or 4 birds that land in those trees during the time I'm there. Just noticing like several places where that's not happening. Although there was one tree out here closer to where I live, I'm a little further away from town, and there was like 10 birds in the tree right next to where I parked, and they were all facing me as if to say, "Notice me because you're not going to see us much more." I know that's crazy, but I'm a little crazy, and that's why I'm doing this.
No, no, I don't think that's crazy. I do not think that's crazy at all. I firmly believe that all the other species, both flora and fauna, are more sentient than we give them credit for. And I'm sure they know. When I see the dolphins going past my house, I always think, I wonder what you think. I wonder what you think of me. They know. They know that the changes in their habitat are changing rapidly. They are completely sentient about that and completely aware about it. When you talk about the birds, there's an insect apocalypse taking place on this planet at the moment, where there's a collapse of the global insect population. Just a minor detail. We can't function without insects. We have no habitat without insects. We have no crops and no food growing without insects. They
Abs-
know the birds. The sapiens are probably the last species on the planet to have full comprehension of the severity of the crisis that's unfolding. I firmly believe that.
I kind of think so too. Uh, yeah, I think humans are probably the most ignorant species. Definitely the least emotionally intelligent, the least, I don't know.
They
And
had the species had the audacity to call itself the smart ape.
I know they're
You're
certainly
smart.
not that clever, uh, tricky, clever, not wise, clever. So, okay, natural person. Maggie May asked, "Do you think end of life?" Oh wait, I already did that one. Thank you, Osama. I'm getting I'm getting better at this. Okay. Um, Chris Foster, we were planning on living on Mars, so do you think it is possible that isolated pockets of humanity could carry on and adapt small areas where they could exist?
Yeah, that's a good question, but I firmly believe that it won't work. I used to be, when I was a young fellow, I trained as an electrician and I worked as an electrical engineer. Even though I don't have an engineering qualification, I've been employed as an engineer. And one of the things that I know is that all electrical systems fail. No one has ever been able to produce or make a fail-proof electrical system. When industrial civilization falls over, no matter what bunker you've got, no matter what bug out situation you've got, you rely on spare parts, you rely on fuel, and you rely on food. All of those things are going away. I think the people who think that they can bug out and go and live in a bunker somewhere, I think that shows the level of insanity at the edge of extinction that we are witnessing, that people think that we can live without the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees. Who the fuck would want to live without them? Only a sociopath would
I
want to
wouldn't.
be around. We'd, but yeah, when this beautiful existence, this beautiful biosphere falls over, who would want to be here? That shows the level of insanity that we're dealing with these people, with the likes of Elon Musk, who wants to leave the most beautiful habitable planet that we know of and go to Mars, which is uninhabitable. You know, come on, people, pay attention. That's a money-making scheme. Follow the fucking money.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to find more questions because we have gone over by quite a bit. Last chance. Did I miss anything? Aw, thank you, human. That was really nice of you. Um, he was talking about my interview from yesterday, which is sweet. Um, let's see. Sandy from Environment on the Coffee House is right on, Kevin. Love you too, warm and fuzzies. Here's a question. Everything that is supposed to go to Mars is being and has been being tested at the South Pole area, and the growing of food has been a great step. It's working very well. Might live. So that's interesting.
Well, I just simply refute that. I just don't believe that. You know, we've never been to Mars. How can someone say that all this can be done on a planet that we've never been to? Come on, people, pay attention.
No, but
Stop
that one
smoking
was
the hope.
is talking about using that what they worked on to live in the North Pole or up there. And where did he say? To be able to live up there when everything goes to hell. All the technology that they worked on for Mars, even though not for Mars, but for living, making an inhabitable place here. I think that was the question.
Well, if nothing else, I'm happy to agree to disagree on whether that's viable or not. But if nothing else, it just goes to show that there are people with a lot of money who know that this planet is soon to be uninhabitable.
That's
They
absolutely
wouldn't be
true.
chucking this money. It's an admission. It's an admission of our perspective.
Exactly. Okay, the dude, I'm not even sure how decommissioning nuclear power plants would help much. Where to put all that material? That's
Yeah, well,
yeah.
that's what I think could happen is that if we got some of the highly enriched uranium fuel rods into cast containment, the fires would be lesser, so there would be less. But the reality is that that's just what would be a feel good thing to do, but it's not going to have any real bearing. We're so far over the cliff that even talking about that to a large degree is a bit pointless. A, it's not going to happen, and B, they've never figured out in the time since they started splitting the atom and creating nuclear waste, they've never figured out what they can do with it anyway. So after we've gone off the cliff and we're like, you and me are like Thelma and Louise sitting in the convertible having this conversation in the free fall stage, talking about cast containment and decommissioning nuclear
Tough.
power stations.
Sorry.
It's a bit of a
Tough. Come here.
academic exercise that's pretty much pointless.
Yeah. Sorry. I know I'm getting
So we've
invaded.
got another
I'm on
species who wants
live. I
to join.
can't visit right now. Tough. Lay down. Sorry about that.
No problem. I'm happy to hear another species opinion.
Yeah. You tell them what to think. Get up. Get up there. Get up. No. Okay. Sorry. All right. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's any more questions. We got to really let you go. Um, Tough, quit it. We've heard enough from you. Okay, I'm gonna go to the end and tell me if there's any questions I missed. Awesome. I think we're good. I don't see any more coming up real quick.
Yeah, cool.
What?
Cool.
Cool.
Cool. We'll call it a day, I think, eh?
Yeah, it's been long enough. I've really taken up way too much of your time, but I am really happy with this interview. I'd love to be able to do it again sometime because this tends to be my topic. And if we survive long enough, maybe do it in a month or two.
Yeah, absolutely. If you and your listeners want me to come back, I'd be happy to do it. Things are going to move very quickly. I'll be surprised if in 2 or 3 months we have another conversation like this, and things haven't panned out the way I'm suggesting they will. And I'd like to finish with the thought that Guy and myself have no desire to be right. Turn
I
out to
don't
be
either.
wrong, we'll be the two happiest people on the planet.
Yeah, I'd be very happy as well, but
Awesome.
not extraordinarily confident in that. But yeah, thank you so much. Thank you everybody who's watching live And I really appreciate you guys being here. I saw Oz show up late, but thanks, Oz, for being here. Anyway, y'all have a very good day, and I will talk to you soon.